What's up, everybody? Chris Harris here from Sample Spotlight, and today I thought I'd do a little bit of a template talk in Cubase 8. So I've been a Cubase user for a few years now, and I first started on Cubase 7 and have gone through all the iterations, except I didn't dive into Cubase 8.5 or 9, mainly because I kind of found a workflow within Cubase 8 that worked for me, and I don't really want to update and kind of screw that up. So over the years, I've kind of learned some things. I've listened to composers such as like Hans Zimmer, who uses Cubase, and have picked up some workflows that he's mentioned that I put into practice on short films that I've worked on, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense, that works. Such as starting a cue around measure 5. So I've kind of set up this template to do something similar. I have a pre-measure here, which, depending on the instruments that I will use, I'll add in some information in measure 0, kind of, the pre negative measure here, to kind of start the cue out. So I don't do that initially because I don't really know what I'm going to write, and I don't really want to go through here and put in automation for every single instrument. So as you can see right here, I've got around 567 tracks loaded up. So I thought I'd share what I decided to put in my template and kind of why. So it's mainly just libraries that I use, love, and I know very well. Some that I've reviewed recently, some that I've owned for a number of years. So kind of let's get started. So right off the bat, to show you how I have everything structured, I have it all in score order. Score order for all individual sections, and then I have kind of like a full ensemble folder, which has kind of everything that's just the entire orchestra. So things like Cinna Orc is in here. The freebies from I forgot the name. I can't remember the name, but they had some freebies. Orchestral Essentials, for instance, they have these patches such as Action and Suspense. They're great for just quick mocking up things. So when you have an idea, as long as you know how the patches work, you can just kind of go in there and do like, one button type compositions. And then I usually flesh things out over here. So I kind of consider this more of a sketching template. And then I have like effects that you can't really get with single libraries. And then some phrases like vivace. This one I've wanted to put some other things into it, but decided to kind of leave it out for now, just because I don't really use vivace much anymore. It's more kind of a Kickstarter, if you will. So let's just kind of go down through what I've got in this template. So in Woodwinds, I've loaded up the VSL solo Woodwinds, thing, and I don't have a lot of VSL stuff, but their clarinet B flat, it's actually clarinet 2, or the second B flat clarinet that they had. It just has like a tone and character that I really like. And might I also add that I've disabled everything. So all I have to do is just do my key command, and it will load up the instrument. And I'll show you how I have it loaded here. So this is kind of the patch, and I've kind of taken a mixture of their original articulation control, and then I kind of changed it to match the structure for the Spitfire Woodwinds a little bit. It's going to be loosely based off of that. But what I've got is the performance legato, legato with no vibrato and then with vibrato, and how that transitions between the two is via CC21, and so I can basically change between those two. Now it's not a fading between, it's just once you get to up here, when you re-trigger, you now have a vibrato. So to kind of hear that in action, and then let's move on through our key switches here. And now we have sustain, vibrato, non-vibrato, and then We have flutter tongue, which is crescendo, but down here we just have regular dynamic crossfading. And then let's move up. We have staccato and portato shorts mixed right there. So here's our staccato, and then portato. And then the next one we have the kind of trills performance. And I've just put both of them on the top or bottom, so it doesn't matter because there really isn't a variation. And what this does is allows me to it's like runs, stuff like that, but it allows you to play trills. So that's kind of my basic patch. Now there's tons of other stuff that I could include, and I could make additional patches, but I kind of went with just the basics. And then this goes through my reverb change, which is just simply the lexicon. Let me pull that up here. There we go. It's the random hall, and then I just have it set to like a 2.6, and then a minimal pre-delay. Full mix, kind of very basic settings, just to kind of give the tone. I love the tone of the Lexicon PMC bundle. Definitely worth checking out, especially when it's on sale. Everything is routed, I should mention, to section buses here, and then each bus is then sent to a final out. And then I haven't added anything for stems yet, because depending on the project, I kind of want my stems to be actually broken down a little bit more than what these are. So that kind of will play in later. This is simply just to keep things routed and tidied up for the kind of main template. All right, so the other things, let's, I guess, just keep going here. So I have everything kind of set to key commands. That's the other trick. You know, for instance, just a simple button, boom, I can pull up the instance of whatever is there and then disable it as needed. For Spitfire, I'll just load a few of these in. You can see how long it takes to kind of load them in. Now this can be a little tiresome for some, but like I said, I wanted this to be more of kind of like a modular approach to composing, so I can just load in what I need and not have to worry about pulling up an instance of Contact, then searching and finding what I want. They're already here, so it's a lot of everything I have. Now, there's different ways that I can use for workflows. So Spitfire, by default, they have key switches that I've moved and I've actually set to C0. And what these do are allow me, within the sequencer, or sorry, the MIDI editor, let's just pull up some data here. I can go in and I can put, you know, my key switch data down here starting at C0 and, you know, write what I need. So there we have longs. I might, for instance, want to do long and a short. So this passage would be something more of the lines of this. Let's turn the click off. So you can blend between two. Now this I can set either this way, or I've actually gone in and I've created expression maps for every single thing that I've got loaded that I have key switches set to. So I can load up the Spitfire one, and you can see that I've included a like staccato sustain or staccato mercato sustain, and how that would work is simply like this. We'll do the same thing. Or I can make it staccato sustain. And it does the same thing. So I have two different workflows that I can choose between. I don't have all of the expression maps loaded because I've found that if you do, Cubase just kind of blows up sometimes, if there's, especially with how many that I have created. And I mean, the list just kind of goes on from woodwinds down to strings. So I start out with no maps, but I can include that if I feel like that's going to be a quicker workflow for me, which sometimes it is when I can visually see the articulations down here. But if not, I just will go with the standard key switch, which I've done. I kind of go back and forth. Some other minor things that I've done for visually is I like the color of this, the background kind of default, but the grid lines were very kind of dim for me, so I brightened them up and made them lighter so they pop a little bit more so I can see. But the other thing that was ridiculous is when you get to a small, the skinnier tracks, you can't read what these are. So I actually had to go into the settings and set it up to where now, whenever I have track data, it tells me what instrument it is, and I can read it right, up front, as well as which section it's in. So if it's in Spitfire, Woodwinds, or Orchestral Tools, that way I have an idea. So it was one of those things where I know it sounds stupid, it's very simple, but it made a very big difference when working in kind of a larger, template like this. I can actually see what each data that's loaded into the timeline, what it's actually controlling. So that was a plus. So I'll go ahead and kill these fellas. I'll leave the piccolo up in case we wanted to hear or test something out later. So then I also have Orchestral Tools Woodwinds, and how I've loaded this is I've loaded all of the main instruments. Now I'm not going to load these all up now just because of time, but I've loaded the kind of main, I think I used Flute 2 for this one, just for the tone. And so I've got the piccolo, the Flute 2, and then there's flutes in octaves that I've loaded, and there's I used oboe 1, there's the English horn, and I used clarinet 1. And in the ensemble, the bass clarinet and contrabassoon, those come from the one of the expansions, and then I have the effects, which is another expansion that I've loaded in here in performance order, or score order, I should say. And then there's also the runs builder that I've put in there. So everything, again, it also has its own expression map that I've basically put into their own folders for by developer. And then moving on, I have a section for world winds, such as the Shakuhachi, which this is from Spitfire Audio, and I really do like the sound of this library. It's the Andy Finden kit bag, and that's the breath noises. Let's go to the performance. And it's got tons of effects and styles, very idiomatic to the instrument. Of course, there's different microphone positions. I always start with whatever the default is, and then I can choose the sound from there. I don't want to put myself into a position like I want to use just the ribbon mics or the close room or whatever it is, the close ribbon and then the room mic, whatever they've got here going on. I prefer to just load up the standard, whatever they used, and then go from there. So I have that whole library, the Andy Finden kit bag. I think it's the first one. There's a second volume as well. But I have that all loaded, and then I have the Efimov Deduk. And then I'm reviewing right now it's the Ancient Persia era library from Eduardo Tarlante, and I love it. So I'm not going to cover that now. That's going to be in a future review coming soon. But I've loaded all of the winds from that library into here, and they're great. I have some private stuff that I can't share, but sorry to say that. I know probably some of you are like, "Ooh, what's in there?" I'm sorry, can't show you. And then I have the miscellaneous woodwinds. Now, when you see miscellaneous, what this is it's like I've got libraries from a bunch of other developers that do, have a sound that I like, but I don't really have other things to load in for them like I do for these, where these have a large thing. So I've got Embertone's Crystal Flute and Herring Clarinet loaded. I think I've shown this before in a video, but I just love this library. It's very simple. It's a very nice warm sound that just none of the other flutes that I have can do. So I had to make sure that that was in there. And then the rest are the Woodwind patches from Sonokinetics, various libraries, Soto, Maximo, some of which I've reviewed, some I just own outright, including like the runs from, I think Capriccio is in that. I think so, yeah. And then I have Woodwinds, which I think a lot of composers have these. These are just tried and true. It's a tried and true library. It's a workhorse. So it's great for sketching woodwind parts very quickly. And then they have all the different scales and runs of the scales to use. So I, of course, had to have that loaded. Now, one thing I should keep in mind is if you take this route, you need to be very cautious if you want to load a whole bunch of stuff, because Kontakt has this feature included. It's how it handles the beats per minute. You can either go via the host, which is if you have external tempo enabled, which means it's going to connect to Cubase here, and whatever my set tempo is, which is 120. If you can see, I turned just to 150. Boom, it changes to 150, and now I've changed the screen. Sorry about that. My number pad changes the slides on my video thing here. So, anyways, so moving on. So yeah, you can change the tempo that way, and let's just go down to. Let's go back to 120, and then actually let's do 20. There we go. And then so yeah, I always turn that off for any libraries that I'm not doing any type of tempo syncing with. So some of the brass patches, for instance, have tempo locked or can be tempo locked double tonguing. So for those, I have them enabled. Actually, I think I have them disabled by default. But all that does is Cubase isn't going to be looking at every single instance, because these are all individual instances of Kontakt, and trying to process tempo for them. It would just make this meter right here go way over here and turn red. And as you can see here, nothing is happening. So it's very good on the system to keep that low. All right, so that's the Woodwinds. Let's check out what I have for brass. All right, so I've got a couple things for brass: the Flugelhorn and the Vienna horn. Again, two just different sounding brass instruments that weren't available in other libraries that I owned. So it fills a hole in that, and again, all set through. I think I have them going through. Yes, Virtual Soundstage, and what this is set up is basically through the Cinna Brass templates that are included down here. So Cinna samples and then Cinna Brass. I just put them in the sections that they would be played in, and then tweaked the settings as necessary. I'm using the Deca tree. It's in the room that's supposed to mostly resemble Air, since how I do or go about my reverb and placement is I think about the library that has the most, like the natural samples that were recorded. I go with the one that has the most ambient sound, and that's being Spitfire's Audio's libraries recorded at Air Studios at Lyndhurst Hall in London, which vaguely has this shape. And then I basically try to position everything as necessary and get them to match that kind of sound. So that's what I did here. And then the Flugelhorn, I think. It has a very different sound. I don't use it as much, but it's definitely a color that I blend and layer with my other libraries, especially with French horns, or not French horns, with trumpets to kind of soften them a bit. So that's how that's set up, as well as the other ones I have. Can disable that. So then I also have Strets-Off Brass loaded in here. And let me quickly, I won't load the legatos because those take forever. But I can load these up really quick and kind of show you some reasons why I have this brass library. Now, there are some bugs and some weird things that happen sometimes with it, but what I love is the fact that it's a very just kind of raw and natural sound. So like the four horns here. On the softer dynamics. So it just kind of has this, I don't know, there's room there, there's life in it that I really like. And so I love to layer these with my other brass libraries to really bring that out. The trombones, they recorded 2 trombones, and I remember complaining a lot because the tuning isn't the best, but that's okay, because when you layer it, it kind of adds that level of intonation issue, which actually makes it sound more realistic, because not all libraries are they're not all in tune, or not libraries, but real orchestra. So that's one reason why I have this library, is it just adds more life and depth to my other ones. And there's kind of a harsher, brassy tone to them that libraries like Spitfire's Symphonic Brass can't do. So we'll turn those off. So Spitfire Brass, I have the Symphonic Brass loaded here, and you can see I have them in sections and by size, and then, you know, from high to low, technically. And then I've also included Albion Brass from Albion 2, Albion 3, as well as the original Albion. Wasn't a big fan of the re-release, or not re-release, but they basically redid Albion 1. Not a big fan of that sound. It's a little bit processed and produced kind of sound, which the original Albion had that raw characteristic that I really like. So I have like their effects here. There's also this library in the labs called Trumpet Fields, and I just loaded up one instance here. They're individual patches. Come on, there we go. And basically I just have like the cautious mutes, and you can just kind of hear what it's, I think it's 3 trumpet players, 3 or 2, and they recorded them in stereo, and it's kind of like a precursor to like an Evo Grid, but for trumpets and brass. So I'm hoping that they do that, actually. But I found this to be very useful on some of my previous projects. Yeah. So, and then there's Tundra. I've got the high brass and low brass. Great library. So then I also have Cinna Brass. I think everyone at this point, if they don't own it, they probably should, because it's just a great sounding library and easy to program. It doesn't have tons of articulations available and, you know, different types of playing styles that brass can do, but it has the very core like essence of brass for film scoring. And so I usually start with this library. It's one of my main ones. And then I have some Orchestral Tools brass loaded. the trumpet ensemble from Berlin Brass, and then the trumpet ensemble from Metro Arc 2, or 1, sorry, and then the horns ensemble from Berlin Brass, and then the 9 horns from Metro Arc, trombones, and chimbassi. So these are just kind of basic colors to kind of get that sound I want. Don't you really use them too much. And then I have Chris Hines brass. Not a big fan of the French horns and trombones in it, but the trumpets have a very cool sound, in my opinion. And I can't remember if it's... There we go. So I have things set to key switches on that. It's again going through Virtual Soundstage and my reverb chain, which really isn't a change, just one reverb. So yeah, good sound there. Definitely for solo lines, it can do a lot. So I have all 3 loaded for that. And then my miscellaneous brass, I have the Chapman trumpet from Embertone, really great sound. And then I have the Harman and Cup Mute trumpets from the original first release, Swing from Project Sam. I'm actually reviewing that as well, and that's going to be coming out soon. I think maybe later this week or next week. And then I have the phrase libraries from Sonokinetic in that. So that's the brass section, and then we have choir. Now, yes, at this point I'm kind of a fanboy because I've reviewed. Actually, I'm in the middle of reviewing Rhodope, coming out next week. But I have almost all of Stretzov Sampling's choir libraries, and as well as Oceana, which I'm currently reviewing as well, which is Jasper Blanc's performance samples, I believe. So just starting with the women and men, that's how I have them broken up here, and then I have soloist libraries as well as kind of a full choir ensemble libraries. My go-to, is for women, it's Freya, sorry, and then Votan for men, and then I've also included the Victoria, and I don't even know how to pronounce that, from Metro Arc. I have those split out. I've added Rhodope to my women's choir sample libraries, and then for the full choir ensemble is Tutti Vox. I love the sound, and it does so much. It covers everything in the human voice that it was missing. So, or in large numbers, not soloists. For soloists, it's really more kind of world driven. From different locations, different vocal styles. Kind of the most vanilla Western sound I have is from Ivy Audio. It was a little freebie they had called Claire Solo, and I use that for kind of just that kind of ethereal female voice. And so these are the choir libraries I use, and I get a lot of mileage out of them, especially with the word builders from Stretzov Sampling, the Scylla Builder engine. To me, it's the best out there. It is very easy to use and gives you great results. All right, and then in the percussion category, which I'm a percussionist, so I've been very sorry if you hear dogs barking in the background. It's pretty warm today, so the window's open. But I have I love percussion, mainly orchestral percussion. So I've focused this very strictly on orchestral percussion plus epic percussion, because that's kind of a zeitgeist, as they say. So I have Percussion Redux as well as all the Albions, except Albion 4 doesn't have percussion, and Albion 5 I really didn't care too much for what was in there percussion-wise. So anyways, I've got those loaded up, and then orchestral percussion, Berlin percussion, which I had the original The Timpani, which then they later included um, as an expansion. And how I've got that broken up is I have normal hits and then normal rolls, and then I've got rolls put into different tempo locked settings of quarter note, half note, 1 bar, 2 bar, crescendos, and then I have the hard hits, hard rolls, the Baroque, and Baroque rolls. I didn't put the soft in there because honestly, in a mix, there's no real discernible difference between normal and soft, in my opinion, and how I've used it. In an exposed setting, yes, but I don't really use timpani too much in exposed settings, so I felt like I could leave it out. I can always add it later. And then Glockenspiel, sorry, I won't go through all that. And then Orchestral Tools, Orchestral Sphere had some percussion that I really liked, so I included those in there as well. And then there's the Metro Arc percussion. And then I have some world percussion from Koran, currently reviewing that as well. Toll from Sonic Kinetic. There's the Bode Gamelan from Sonic Couture. And then this was a freebie from, it was Will Bedford's. I don't remember if this is from his current project or the old one, but are the like Northern Scoring Tools, which no longer exists anymore. So I don't remember which one that was from, but it's a really cool sound, so I definitely included that. And then I have Drums of War 2, which is considerable percussion, and I've got those in there. And then Epic Percussion, I've got Capriccio had some percussion, multi-sampled percussion included, minimal as well, and then Stretzoff Sampling's Thunder Extreme. Great library. I used it recently on my Xena Warrior Princess, the main theme mock-up and transcription that I did, and it covered everything percussion except for timpani, at least what I needed in the timpani, and they sound great. They have a hits and rolls patch, perfect. I'm also reviewing Drums of the Deep 2. Great stuff in here. The 100 microphone positions, which can allow you to change the sound as you need, is awesome. So I included them in the template because I just didn't have anything that really had that characteristic. And then an oldie but goldie is just the original Drums of War, like the 1.5 update. I have all of those loaded in as individual patches. And that's the percussion. So let's go to piano and harp. I have less of these, mainly because I'm not someone who, it's like when I find a piano that I really like, I don't really get more. I really liked the Hammersmith, and I am a pianist. I grew up starting on piano when I was 5 years old, so geez, 25 years ago. So having a close, intimate relationship with the instrument, I rather enjoyed what the Hammersmith had. Now, sorry, that should be Sonic Couture. Sorry. So anyways, Sonic Couture's been known, to me, their samples tend to be, and this might sound bad, but I don't see it as a bad thing, kind of more sterile, very clean, and I like that because it allows me to take things, into a different direction. So this is a library that is just a very clean sound. They have very nice microphones and positions that they use to record it in different settings. It can do a lot, and there's different tuning options. So to me, that's my dog Lily in the background. To me, it's a great workhorse piano library that you can screw with to get the sound that you need. And then my other two favorites are the original freebie that Spitfire Audio release called Soft Piano, and then they later took that concept and developed their commercial release of Felt Piano. So those are my three pianos in there, and then the harps are just Spitfire Audio, Sonic Kinetic, and Orchestral Tools harp from Orchestral Sphere. To me, these three harp libraries cover everything that I need in a harp. And then strings. Okay, here we go. Everyone has a bajillion string libraries, so trying to figure out what to put in here was actually very easy for me. First off, I use chamber strings. That's my go-to. I love the sound. I know the library. It has so many articulations that it covers for the whole or the string orchestra, and I love the intimate close sound. From there, it kind of gets, I layer as needed. Symphonic Strings is a great library. There's a lot of fun stuff. I got to use it on that podcast where I covered the whole Spitfire Audio symphonic orchestra, and it's actually more consistent in terms of the articulations from each section than chamber strings is, but it just doesn't have that kind of close grittiness that I like in sample libraries. And it's a little bit more of a produced professional, or not produced professional, sorry, it's a little bit more polished sounding compared to chamber strings. And then I also have a bunch of Albion strings loaded from both Albion 1 and Albion 2, the original releases, or the current versions of the original releases. And then for good measure, I threw in the LCO strings just because there's no articulations out there like the ones in this library, in any library. I have the Quartet and their solo strings from Spitfire Audio. Don't use these too much, but it was really just to have the capabilities to do a very small sound. The Quartet I would honestly only use as a quartet. I don't think these instruments work very well as solo instruments, but they work very well together. So it's really kind of just there to use in case I want just a string quartet sound. Solo strings, Bohemian Violin all the way. That was an immediate addition when I reviewed it or got it for review. And I love the Nocturne Violin and Nocturne Cello. Great legato patches in here. So those are included. Don't really use the Spitfire too much, but it's really for layering and getting kind of that first chair type of sound. And then I have the Evo Grid strings on here, a bunch of freebies from Spitfire Audio that kind of do that evolving texture. And then I've added Cinematic Studio strings and Soaring strings. I've reviewed these, and there's just no library that can do that soaring vibrato in a polished way. Libraries have them like Symphonic Strings with the Rachmaninoff longs in these patches here, but there's no like true legato with it. These have a slightly drier sound, which can make them cut and sit up front a little bit more, which is great. Sorry, down here. Cinematic Studio strings, I use that simply as to be layered with, and it just has a good sound. And actually, Novo strings, to me, they complement each other in terms of how they work together. Well, let me show you. So let's pull up the first violins of Cinematic Studio strings and Novo strings. So just to make sure I've got the key switches right. Okay. So that should be the sustains. Let's pull this one up. And legato there. Okay. So I just have the standard legato. Let's take a listen to the first violin. Now these are all going through my reverb chain. I don't know if they're the same. Kind of roughly. So here is the first violins in Cinematic Studio strings. And then let's listen to the violins in Novo strings. And then just together how they layer. I think they work well together. Have a very similar tone. Even the shorts. So that's why I put them in there. They both, to me, have a very similar sounding quality to them, and it's good just to kind of have two things that can do the same thing to layer and get the sound you need. So I'm going to actually purge that and close those. So then, yeah, soaring strings. What else do I have on here? Okay, Symphonic Sphere. Again, just a style of articulations that when this first came out weren't existing. For instance, this patch here. That's such a cool sound. So I, of course, had to include that. Apparently, this library is getting an update. Don't know when, but you know, it's going to be updated, I think, to Capsule and everything. And then I have a really old library, the Sonic Implants, which it just has a nice mixed sound to it, and it's great for layering. You saw Novo strings, and then, of course, Sonokinetics phrase strings down here. So that's what I have for my string library, and then the full ensemble, I kind of covered a little bit of what's in there. I have to say these, pull this up. Who is that? It's the Sonu score, yeah. Sonu score. Anyways, these. Just basic one-shot chords, great sound. Definitely worth getting. It's free, so Velocity decides the major and minor quality of it. But yeah, I like stuff like that because it's really easy to get your ideas out quickly and not having to program a whole bunch. You just hold it down, get the sound you need, and then because I like to actually orchestrate outwards, especially if I'm going to produce a score, I can just listen to that, see it, and then easily score it for the strings or whatever the voice is. Little things about workflow. I like to play in everything and then tweak from there. I find myself, the way Cubase works is it's very easy. I try to have everything set to just single key commands. Some are the standard ones that are by default. Other ones, I'll just draw in real quick. I like to be able to do things that I do a lot. For instance, I'm constantly sending rough drafts of cues to my director friend when I work on one of his films, and he likes to just hear, if I've worked for a week or so, what I've got for whatever I've worked on. He's also very musically inclined, so it's almost a collaborative score in that regards. He is very versed in knowing chords. He's like, yeah, when you go to like the minor chord there, maybe if we add a seventh or something, it could add this type of quality. And so it's great. But I don't want to have to go every time I'm, at the end of the day, just go down here, go to export, and then export audio mix down. When Cubase allows you just to do everything at the push of a button. So that's what I do here. I simply have a key command that gets the actual, it covers all the data that I'm using, and then it processes through and goes to my export options, and then I can export from there. Don't mind this. This was a demo I did for a concert a few weeks ago, where I had a group where we put together an 80s style montage song. It was very corny, and I loved it. Loved every second. The great thing about working in stems and in Cubase is it shows up, your group channels show up here, so you can always route things to individual stems, and then you can take off the stereo output, and you can actually check all of these as needed. So you can export things as individual tracks, which is awesome. So you can do channel batch export and then basically choose all the tracks you want, and then boom, these are sent out. Now, I would probably, for most of my stuff, I would do the ones in caps here, except for orchestra. This is basically just going out to the stereo out. So there's really no point in doing that. When they get all these, they have control over these individual sections, then that go to a final bus to the output. But this is basically how you can do exporting in Cubase and get stems in a quick and easy way, and I like that. So it's kind of, this is how I use Cubase right now, and how my template is set up. I know a lot of, I'm not on the level of composers that are doing television shows and everything where their templates are thousands of tracks. I don't do big budget Hollywood things where I'm going to be layering. I'm going to have 80 stems for something. I'm a pretty simple-minded composer right now. But I've kind of gotten into a workflow, and I think that's the key thing when you have a template, is getting a workflow down and sticking to it. You will learn your software as you go. Once you get your key commands down and you customize things, then you'll kind of find yourself, discovering new things, as well as you'll get to a problem that will need to be solved. And that problem will be incorporated, or the answer to that problem will be incorporated into your workflow for future projects. This template for me evolved from tons of different things. Originally using the instrument rack and doing multiple outputs through here, and then routing the outputs and to all that. Not a big fan of that anymore. I just want to be able to load up what I need when I need it, and everything else can go away. I can't remember my key command, but I have one also set up to show only my used tracks in a project, so I can get away from looking at a bajillion open folders of tracks. So that's nice. I can load up all the ones I need and then just show those and work in a smaller view, which is great. So can't remember it off the top of my head. I'd have to go into my preferences, or key command preferences, and check that out. But this is my template. So I don't recommend people doing exactly what I do when it comes to templates, but I highly encourage you, if you want to be able to work quickly, and you do kind of similar stuff over time, developing a workflow for that type of style. There's composers out there that are doing videos that do a lot of animated TV series, so they have a workflow for scoring those types of shows, and that's what's important, is getting a workflow down that works for you. So anyways, that's my 48 minute now video over my template in Cubase 8 Pro. And for some, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. For others who got a minute in and realized I wasn't going to be playing a whole bunch of instruments or writing anything and are or already dislike the video, thanks anyways for watching. I appreciate it. Take care, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.